Hi, podcast listeners. This is your host, Jenna Pecor, and I'm so excited to bring you our episode for today. If you are a first-time listener or a listener who has been with me since day one and you love what I'm doing, I want to encourage you to support the podcast by giving a small donation. I love bringing you new faces and interviews, but it does take time and resources to do it. And any support you'd be willing to give goes towards website upkeep, travel, time, and costs, and would help me greatly to keep doing what I'm doing. Give your support by going to paypal.me/Faces of Grand Prairie. Today I'm interviewing Steve Pryor. Steve is a Grand Prairie resident, an original employee of the Ticket radio station, and a former GPISD School Board Trustee. He talks to us today about how he got into the radio industry and how the forum of radio has changed over the years, as well as what it's like day to day to be an elected official in his city. He tells us how we can get more involved to make a difference in local government and how to be a responsible voter in your community. Steve is always a delight to talk to, and I'm fortunate that he happily agreed to be a guest on the podcast. I think he brings some great and positive ways we can all be involved community members of Grand Prairie. Recorded at the offices of the Ticket in downtown Dallas, here's Steve Pryor. Enjoy! Hi, Steve. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you, Jenna?
I'm doing well. Normally, I would record somewhere in Grand Prairie, but when he said, "You want to come down here?" I said, "Yes, please." And my dad is actually a visitor today. He doesn't have a mic, but he's hanging out with us. But Steve lives in Grand Prairie. He has a child that goes to the Grand Prairie Independent School District, and he's worked for the Ticket for 26 years. And he's also a former school board member. And he's also my friend. So thank you for coming.
Not a problem. Glad to do it.
So one of the things that I really wanted to talk to you about is you have been with this radio program for 26 years. How did you get into this business?
I grew up outside of Chicago. It's northwest suburbs of Chicago.
Wait. You're not from Texas?
No. And I don't have a drawl, which is good. Once you get into radio, they generally frown on the thick accent. But I grew up outside of Chicago and went to a community college in the suburb that I was living in. And my parents at the time were insistent that I not just go to school, that I get involved in something. Mm-hmm. And so there were a couple of things that, I got involved in the program board, which was they put on the concerts and the shows and the plays and whatnot at the college. And the other thing is they had the college radio station. And I applied. They took me. I ended up doing a couple hour a week air shift and fell in love with it. Mm. And went from there, interned at what at the time was the biggest rock station in Chicago. So I interned, did some part-time work there, and just grunt work of filing and doing research and that kind of thing. Mm. But it was the exposure to, big-time rock and roll. And just like one of the jocks at the time was Mark McEwen, who later went on to do weather for the Today Show. Mm. He was like one of the fill-in weekend weather guys for the Today Show. But it was it was big-time media, big-time radio. Fell in love with it. Mm. Now, a couple of years later, my dad got transferred down here. I had the choice. I'm 20 years old. Do I want to live in Chicago by myself and try to pay all those bills, or come down here and finish school? So that's what brought me to Texas.
I got you.
American Airlines transferring, their hub of operations to DFW.
Wow, so you came straight to DFW. Do you like, did you find it to be a better shift? Did you like living down in Texas?
My birthday's in November. The first year I was down here, I'm outside on my birthday in shorts and a t-shirt, cutting down a tree that my parents wanted out of their backyard. And I'm like, okay, I was used to a Halloween costume of what could I go as for Halloween that I can do over a parka.
Right, exactly.
It's, okay, it's, there are certain, you can't be sexy whatever in Chicago if you're going out trick-or-treating, because it's going to be 35 degrees.
Right, exactly.
And so, coming down here in the weather and the fact that we get a snow day a year, maybe.
Today was supposed to be one of them.
Yeah. I just the weather, the weather's a big player for me. Of growing up, dealing with the ice, the snow blowing the driveway every couple of days, trying to, so that you can park your car. It just, having nice weather pretty much year round is just a great change of pace.
Yeah, I'll take the hot. I know my dad would disagree since he's from Wisconsin, but I would take the hot over the snow for that long any day.
But I've had people ask me, I don't know how you deal with the heat. And it's like, well, I get out of my air-conditioned house.
Right, exactly.
I get in my air-conditioned car, drive to my air-conditioned office. I work, and then I get back in my car, which isn't air-conditioned at that point, but it cools off pretty quick.
Right.
And I drive home to my, Now, it's bad if you're going out and you're mowing the yard.
Right.
Having to do some stuff outside.
Right.
Or if you have a job that, pity the guys that are roofing,
right?
Construction like across the street from us right now. Yeah, I don't. I pity those guys in the heat of the summer,
right?
When it's 110 and they're out laying concrete.
Yeah, totally.
Pouring concrete, framing houses, whatever.
Right.
But for most of us who work in an office, you don't notice the weather as much.
Right. So when you got down here, is this the first place that you applied to work, or?
No, I went to school up at North Texas for a year, worked at the college radio station there, and then finished my degree at UTA. And at UTA, I got an internship at, at the time it was 92.5, which is still classic rock, and they owned 1310. It was a big band station. And I got a job working overnights on the big band station.
Oh, okay.
And, people are like, you're 28, 26, 28, whatever I was at the time. And I'm DJing overnights on a big band station. It was like, it's a radio job in Dallas.
Right, exactly.
Those are hard to come by. And, I took that job and then moved up. Ended up as assistant program director for that station. And 1310, it was KAAM, is what that company sold, and it turned into the Ticket in 1994.
I gotcha. So were you actually an on-air personality, or have you always been in the production side?
No, then I did a lot of stuff during the week. I had an on-air shift every weekend.
Gotcha.
And, I think I was doing noon to 6 the last year or so.
So when you kind of got into that, was it the behind the scenes stuff that you really fell in love with, or did you ever want to be like an on-air personality?
Oh, I wanted to be on air. There's part of me that still, wouldn't mind it. The thing about, I'm the production director here, and production director is a pretty safe and secure job. Which once you get a family and you got bills to pay. Right. Having that secure job comes in handy, where those on-air jobs are, you live and die by the ratings, and, my job is kind of ratings,
right.
Resistant.
Right, yeah, that's
not the right word, but,
right.
It doesn't matter if we change formats on a radio station, if we, we're still going to need commercials, and that's what my job is now.
Right.
My job is to make sure all the commercials that our sales department goes out and sells gets played when they're supposed to, how they're supposed to, in the right order.
Right. I had a friend of mine who she moved to New York, and she wanted to be an actress, as so many do. And so she went to school and then was constantly trying to, get jobs as, acting jobs. But then she started learning how to do the production and the camera work and the editing and the voiceovers. And she started, she kind of really loved that part of it. And she was able to be a lot more creative. You have to kind of do what people tell you to do when you're acting. So she started really loving that. And so, but it's ended up serving her well. There's a lot more skill sets that you get just doing that. But you guys here, the on-air personalities y'all have here have been here for forever.
Yeah.
So you were a part of it when it just started. Wow.
We had one of our founding members retired a couple of weeks ago, a guy named Mike Reiner.
Mm-hmm.
And with Mike leaving, there are now 5 of us from day one that have been here all 26 years.
That's crazy.
From the get-go. Now, our boss started in April. So he's a newbie. He's a newcomer because he didn't start until April of '94. The rest of us were there in January of '94. And so we make jokes about, you're new. What do you know? And it's like, 2016.
So we're actually we're on a podcasting forum, but in the radio, you and I were talking about this the other day over the phone, talking about just radio as a medium. How have you seen a change in that time?
There's a couple of big things. Is that radio, the market has consolidated ownership. Communications Act of, I think it was 96, removed the ownership caps that were in place, because it used to be you could own an AM and an FM.
That's it?
Yeah. And so, like I said, when I was at KZPS, they owned KZPS and KAAM. That was it.
What was the reasoning behind that?
Just, I'm really not sure. I mean,
interesting.
I think a variety of ownership, you get more competition. There's any number of reasons that it might be. I'm not sure exactly why they just decided to remove it. But when they did remove it, what happened is we've ended up, the radio industry, especially in major markets, has concentrated into 3 ownership groups. Cumulus, which is who we work for here, iHeart, which used to be Clear Channel, and Intercom, which used to be CBS. CBS just sold their radio division to Intercom. But there's 3 main ownership groups, and out of the top 20 stations in DFW, out of the top 20, probably 14 or 15 of them are one of those 3 owners.
I was surprised when we came in because he gave us a tour, and there's so many different production studios, and all of them are doing different shows. I didn't realize, when I got down here, I assumed it was one place where they all record, and it was just a couple offices. I didn't realize that so many people recorded in this office. It's huge in here. The other thing I asked you was, when you have guests that come down here, do you usually do it over, the phone, like a phone interview, or do people come down? So who are some of the celebrities that you've met over the years?
Think the biggest, oh crap moment for me, where I'm walking down the hall one day, and we've got a little bullpen glassed-in area that's, we call it the Jock Lounge. It's got a couple of different, the bullpen, where just, if somebody's waiting to go on air, that's where, there's a table and chairs, and, and that's where people will get parked while they're waiting. Well, I walk down the hall and I look, and I'm like, that dude looks just like the drummer from the Police. And he looks at me and kind of waves, because I'm doing a triple, quadruple take. And, I open the door, and he's like, hi, how are you? I'm like, good. Stuart Copeland? And he's like, yeah, you are? And it's like, Steve Pryor, I'm the, and I just started talking to him, and he was waiting to go on with the Hard Line, which is our afternoon show on the ticket. He was waiting to go on with the Hard Line. Well, he had gotten here early, and he had 15 or 20 minutes to kill. So I'm back there, got a picture with him.
Wow.
But I'm sitting here, and I'm a big music guy.
Right.
I work at a sports station, but music is really my, my first love kind of thing. So I'm sitting here going, dude, I love your music, blah, 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 And it's just random, there he is. And, Aikman does a segment on the station. He usually does it via phone. He has come up here a couple of times, and, so there are some people that, Randy White comes up to record commercials about once a month, and some people it's the Manster. I'm like, it's Randy White. He's up here for right. Dodge City of McKinney. He's up here all the time. I've kind of gotten immune to I'm immune to it now, because it's just, Randy's coming in to record this commercial.
Right.
Other people, our salespeople are like, that's Randy White. And it's like, yes, it is. It's just okay. Again, the music guys have a bigger effect on me than the sports guys, but I do get where, Tony Romo's coming up, so-and-so's coming up,
Right. Yeah, I know. I was kind of hoping I'd run into Gordo when we came in today. I'm not going to lie. But, I was like, and Dad goes, he's going to be gone by the time we get there. I was
10:03.
Yeah.
They get off the air at 10 o'clock, and it's...
Yeah. But you... Where were y'all at before y'all moved into Victory Park?
We were over right across from Reverchon Park, Maple and Turtle Creek.
Gotcha.
And it kind of right, if you know where Scottish Rite Hospital is.
Yes, yeah.
Right across the street from Scottish Rite Hospital.
Okay.
We were right there. It, convenient to 35, convenient to the tollway. It was kind of a good, it's a good business location. You're close to downtown, but you're not,
right.
having to deal with downtown traffic and
right.
parking and everything else.
Right.
Now we're outside the American Airlines Center. The joke I always make is, where Channel 8 is? We're in the other building.
That's what I was going to ask you, because you said, because WFA is right across the way, and y'all kind of can sometimes, if somebody's going down there, you can maybe get them up here. So has it changed being able to have access to like all the athletes? Do y'all get any more people that come up and do stuff with you guys?
No, but it's made it easier for us when we need to, if, for our guys that are covering Mavs practice.
Right.
Or shoot around, whatever, it's right next door. They can grab their tape recorder and walk to their assignment.
Right.
Where it used to be that, okay, you'd come into the station, you'd get your tape recorder, you'd go out to... Now, like, the Stars still do their practice and their skate around out at their Frisco location. But, like the Mavs who have a practice court here, or the other team, if they're doing media availability, it's right next door.
Right. That makes it easy. So you mentioned when you were in college that you were in kind of the media, the arts, that stuff. I know that you're a big Broadway person. You love shows. Is that where that came from?
No, because for me, that was more like concert, we were the concert promoters. And so we were, we'd look at the list of who was on tour and, who you could, okay, how much is in our budget and who's, and you can never get the big, the big name. You hope to get somebody on their way up or on their way down,
right.
But still somebody that, okay, the student center holds 5,000 people, who do we think will sell out 5,000 tickets and make us money?
Right.
But it is kind of that entertainment side. For me, when I kind of got back into, and got hooked on some of the Broadway stuff, Hamilton, when it came out in 2015, 2016, whatever it was, and I tell people, I was walking through Betty Warmack Library.
Oh, wow.
And I saw that, the soundtrack, the original cast recording, correct myself, the original cast recording had come out, and it's like, I've heard about this, and I just kind of grabbed it through it with a couple of books I was grabbing, and went home, listened to it, and just was fascinated. Fascinated by the story, fascinated by the music. It's, I hear Broadway, and I think,
right.
I'm trying to think of this song from Oklahoma where it's, ducks and bows,
right.
and very, I'm hearing in my head very hokey, corny music, and they've got dudes rapping. They've got, it's...
I'm pretty sure you and a lot of other people got reintroduced back into Broadway with Hamilton. Because it's a totally different type of musical. Completely.
Yeah.
The story is original, everything.
And then, so a couple of years ago, we went to New York. Couldn't see Hamilton on Broadway. Couldn't afford it. I wasn't going to pay ridiculous money.
Right.
Saw one called Dear Evan Hansen, which is it's a great story about kids, teens, social media. It's very topical, very today, and the music is sounds like stuff that's on the charts right now. And so it was kind of like, okay, and it's kind of like once you open the door, kind of like the Amazon. Well, if you like this,
right,
you might also like this.
Because you saw Waitress, right?
Waitress is the other one that
right.
we saw. Dear Evan Hansen and Waitress on Broadway, and then we saw Hamilton in Chicago on our way home. We drove home through Chicago just so we could see Hamilton someplace on that tour.
I remember because your wife was my daughter's preschool teacher, which is how we kind of got connected. I didn't realize it at the time, and you guys had stopped by my house for some reason. I don't know if we were having a National Night Out or something, but and y'all were about to go on this trip, and y'all were like, we're going on this tour of all these different shows, and I think you and your son was coming along too. Y'all were taking this big trip, and I was like, that is such a cool family vacation. And I loved Waitress the movie. I wanted to go see Waitress the show. And then once y'all saw it, I was like, okay, I definitely want to do that. I couldn't wait for Hamilton to get here, but even now it's still really expensive to go see that show. But you kind of made me interested again in like doing all that.
All right, I'll tell you, the Waitress thing came about, again, being a music fan. I'd fallen in love with Sarah Bareilles' voice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, she's owned all the albums. Well, she had written the music and the lyrics for the stage show.
Right.
Well, it came out that she was going to star for 8 weeks on Broadway in the show that she wrote the music.
I remember you saying that now. Yep, you're right.
And it's like, I look at it and it's like, oh, she's going to be in it the same time that we're going to be there. So I look and I see if tickets are available, and they are, and I call my wife and it's like, hey, did you see that tweet I sent you? And she's like, oh, Sarah's going to, when is it? And it's like, May whatever through June 10th. Well, we're going to be up there through June 8th. It's like, we're going to be up there June 4th through the 8th, whatever it was. And I'm like, yep. She's like, are there tickets available? And I'm like, I've got 3 on my screen. I'm waiting for you to say okay before I hit. She's like, you love Sarah. You love her music. Yeah, go ahead if you want to, So we go to the show that night. We wait at the stage door. And Christian is like, our now 17-year-old. Christian's like, okay, anytime you guys are ready to go back to the hotel. It's like, just hold on, cast members usually come out and sign autographs. Let's just wait for a little bit. Mm-hmm. So we wait, and Christian's like, I'm ready anytime you guys are, and we're waiting and waiting. So we end up waiting like an hour and a half. And then we see the security guy come out, and he kind of looks around, goes back in the stage door. Comes out a couple minutes later, looks around, goes back in the stage door. Well, by this time, we're coming up on like an hour 45 after the show's ended. Finally, he walks out. Sarah Bareilles walks out behind him. Oh. She goes to the other side, starts signing autographs, and we're kind of like, Christian's like, oh, we're not leaving yet. It's like, no, we're not leaving. She's here. She's signing autographs. So she signs autographs. She comes over to our side of the barrier, and I hand her my playbill, and it's like, hey, big fan, came in all the way from Texas to see the show. She's like, oh, just to see me. And it's like, well, we're seeing Dear Evan Hansen tomorrow. And it's like, oh, that's another great show. And we're seeing Hamilton Sunday in Chicago. She's like, 3 great shows.
Yes.
So actually got to talk to her, interact with her a little bit. Well, then, she goes, signs the next autograph. Well, Kathy's a couple people down on the barrier. And Kathy, hands her the playbill and goes, yeah, I had to give up going to see a Yankee game so he could come to see you. And she's like, hold on, that one's yours? That's yours down there? And, we're kind of like, yep. And she goes, it's usually the other way around, where the wife wants to see the Broadway show and the husband wants to see a Yankees game. And Kathy's like, he loves your music. He wanted, and she's like, well, thank you for making the sacrifice. I appreciate it.
Oh my gosh.
But, it was funny because, like I said, we both got to talk to her, both interacted, got the playbill framed at home.
Oh, that's such a cool experience. I remember when y'all got back, because me and Kathy are also friends on Facebook, and we talked, and I just kept living vicariously through all the things y'all were doing, because y'all were gone for a while.
It was like a 2-week trip, because we try to take, a 10-day, 2-week road trip every summer. And part of it is that having been here this long, I get 4 weeks vacation. So, I've got time that I can take 2 weeks in the summer. And then we're trying to get Christian to, right now, he's at, I think, 42 states, 43. I'm at 47 states, and we're hoping to do an Alaska cruise this summer.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
And the 2 that I don't have are Minnesota and North Dakota, and it's kind of like, that's just going to be a tough get.
Yeah.
Because, it's, what reason do you have,
to go, right.
No offense to anybody from North Dakota.
Right.
I'm not sure there's a lot there to see.
Right. Just the land, I guess. It's pretty up there. But, so you mentioned your son. So he is a senior this year. Are you having any trouble with him graduating? How are you doing with that?
I'm fine Kathy, she's got some friends on Facebook who they've made the joke for years that Kathy was a ball of tears her last year at Powell Elementary where we went. This is the last time. This is going to be their last dance. This is going to be their last this. This is their last field day, and she was crying about everything. Then we get to Reagan, and this is going to be the last dance at their last middle school dance. It's like, yeah, they're going to go to prom. They're going to,
Yeah.
Kathy's a lot more the emotional, I'm like, okay, he's a senior, I'm ready to
get him on to the next thing.
Get him on to college.
But this time he's going away. So it's not quite that he's the same going to a different school. No. So we'll see. But I like I said, I see a lot of the stuff that she posts, and I know that this year when we all started this year, oh, this is his last first day. I remember her saying that when she was there.
My name is Christian, and I am a senior at South Grand Prairie High School. Today, I'm bringing the nonprofit spotlight on Lifeline Shelter. Lifeline is a Grand Prairie nonprofit, and their mission is to reduce homelessness among families of school children in crisis who are enrolled in the Grand Prairie Independent School District by providing emergency assistance, temporary shelter, and life skills training for their parents. This amazing organization works with numerous nonprofit groups in Grand Prairie to provide resources needed to GPISD students whose family is struggling with homelessness. If you or someone you know is in need of the services of Lifeline Shelter, or to donate your time or financial resources to the organization itself, you can find more information on their website at lifeline-shelter.org.
So you live in Grand Prairie, and you have Christian is your only son. So, but you guys live there, and he's been in school this whole time in Grand Prairie. And then you were also an elected official recently in Grand Prairie. So, what's it like? First of all, I always like to kind of humanize elected officials a little bit more, and kind of ask, how difficult is it to consider running in a place where your child goes to school, because you're on school board? Was it hard to make that choice to actually put your life out there and run for elected office? I know Grand Prairie is not a huge town, but it is definitely it's a substantial place to live, and
Well, I'll tell you, I first ran in 2011, lost by 90 votes, 4%. But I ran in 2011. Christian would have been, I guess, a fourth grader then. Mm-hmm. Ran again in 2012 and won. And I tell people, this story kind of cracks me up. The principal at Powell at that time, Mrs. Jones, and I'm in there one day, and we were active in the PTA and up there all the time. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, why do we do things like this? And Miss Jones is like, well, who's asking? And I'm like, what do you mean? And it was like, well, is this Steve Christian's dad, or is this Mr. Pryor from the school board?
Oh.
And I'm like, is the answer that I'm going to be different depending on who's asking? She's like, well, it might be. And, her point was just that what she might tell a parent versus what she's going to tell a school board member.
Right.
There's a little bit of a delta there between how she's going to approach a parent with something versus how she's going to talk to a school board member. We had another case when Christian was at Reagan, where I think it was a science teacher. They had some new curriculum that they had gotten, and it's meet the teacher night, and they had us going around of, okay, go to your first period, kid's first period class, your child's second period class, and we're going along, and we get to this teacher, and he's talking about, oh, this is a great new curriculum. I think your kids are going to love it, blah, blah, blah. The school board just approved it. If you know anybody on the school board, you should thank them, for, tell them, if your kids love it, tell them so that they'll do it again next year. Well, I'm kind of sitting in the back of the room, and I see like 3 or 4 heads in the classroom kind of like turn, and they look at me, and they're kind of like, their hands are doing that shrug motion of, and I'm like, no, it's good. You don't have to tell me. I heard it. And, it was, and we walk out, and it was like, do they not know who you are? And I'm like, I don't want them to know who I am.
Right.
I'd rather them think of I'm just Christian's dad.
Right.
I'm, Kathy refers to me, are you going as, were you going as a dad, or are you going as School Board Steve?
Right.
Because sometimes if it's, if they've asked us to be there officially, I'm dressing up, I'm putting on, GPISD logo, shirt, okay, if I know that they're going to introduce me and have me speak or something, I'm making sure that, I'm not in a grubby t-shirt and a ball cap.
Right.
Well, if I'm just, just going because it's, Christians playing basketball.
Right.
I'll just go to the game in a t-shirt because I'm not going to be introduced. I'm not going to have to interact with people. Although, one of the questions that, what's it like being, that's always one of the weird things of, like, in that classroom where people kind of turn and look at me because our friends all knew that I was on the school board. They, I knocked on their door. I'd put a sign in their yard. So they knew I was on the school board. Well, there are people that don't, and, there are people that don't, and then there are people that do. Kathy always made the joke of, if we go into Tom Thumb, usually I'm usually I can run in and run out. Well, I'm running the Tom Thumb and I'm just picking up milk. 45 minutes later, I get home. She's like, "What happened to I'm just getting milk?" Well, I ran into Jenna, then I ran into blah, and you run into people, and it's like, "Hey, I've got a question for you about whatever," and you don't want to go, "Look, dude, I'm on my time." No, you want to be helpful. You want to, you choose to run because it's public service. You don't want to, email me. Right. No, you don't want to give them the hand. You want to, you've got a question about, our discipline procedure because your kid got in trouble. Okay, here's what I can tell you, blah, 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 and you try to be helpful. Well, sometimes that involves
longer conversations. You were telling me
watching your milk warm up.
Well, you were telling me the other day, but Kathy has told me this before, that y'all take two separate cars. Y'all would take two separate cars to, like, football games or basketball games because she was like, "Listen, I'm all for you talking, but I don't want to sit there and just be standing there waiting." So because you'd get stuck, and that's what happens. So, it's kind of a family affair. You really have to have your spouse on board with that decision. So
very much so. And like I said, Kathy was really good about, after the first time or two where, look, I don't want to shortchange Jenna if she's got a question.
Right.
But I don't want to have Kathy sitting there tapping her wrist.
Right.
Let's go. So how do we split the baby here? And it was like, okay, let's take two cars. If we end up, and it's only, it's only 2 miles to south. If we end up with an extra car, we're not killing the environment completely by taking two cars.
Right.
This way, if I've got a question, if I see an administrator and hey, I've got a question about this, how's this policy working for you guys at ground level? Or if I've got a parent that comes up to me of, hey, I've got an issue, what, can you help me? Can you explain something to me? That way it's like, hey, Kath, I'll catch you at home. Okay, Jenna, how can I help you? What's your problem? What's your issue? Talk to me and I'll tell you what I can do, what the school board may be able to do or not do for you.
Right. And it's, I worked with a school board member prior to knowing you where she would help me do like estate sales. And there would be things that happen, like, I don't know, if a teacher passed away or something like that, where it was kind of like a something that would just pop up. She'd be on the phone all day long. And it kind of gave me insight into what y'all's life is like whenever you are an elected official. And I think school board, it's because I've known city council members, and it's not like that for them nearly as much as it's like that for people that are on school board, which is one of the reasons why, when people say, well, somebody just needs to run against them, I'm like, do you want to do it? Because it's not the easiest thing to do.
Well, I'll tell you where I think the real difference between city council and school board comes in. City council, for the most part, you're dealing with, not the right word, but corporate policies. You're talking about zoning issues. You're talking about code enforcement. You're talking about police and how the police department works and, is it going to be community policing? Is it going to be, are we going to try and build trust, or are we going to go in and guns blazing, and it's more kind of high level, policy based stuff.
Mm-hmm.
When it gets to the school board, it's my child has an issue with this teacher.
Mm-hmm.
My child, is failing. My child got suspended, and I don't think it's fair. My, so much of it is, it involves that sentence, my child.
Right.
And that's where, that's where the difference is. It's very personal.
Yeah.
And, one of the things that, Dr. Hull and I would kind of go back and forth on a couple of different things. But one of the things is that, hey, this parent reached out to me. She says she's reached out to the administration, and hadn't heard back. And it was like, well, and we talk about like customer service response times. And it was like, okay, for that principal calling, Mr. Pryor back might be, one of 10 parents that they need to call back, and that they'll get to, and they're out of the school this day for a meeting, and they've got, this conference that day. They might take a couple of days to get back to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that person, that's consuming their life at that point.
Right, exactly.
And it's like, I understand that, and we had this problem when we were at Reagan. Myself and another parent both called the principal about the same time for a similar issue. I got a call back that day. They heard back 2 days later.
Oh, yeah.
And it was like, okay, is he calling me back because he knows I'm on the school board?
Mm-hmm.
But he's calling my friend back 2 days later because he knows that he can, he didn't think that was as important a phone call. It was both about the same basic thing. We both wanted, some information.
Right.
I got it a lot quicker, and it's just like, okay, at that moment, this guy's question, that was consuming his life. He needed to know this before he could whatever.
Right. And
not getting it drives people crazy.
Yeah, and it's not just my child, it's also my money. And, that's a big part of it. I know that city council controls certain parts of property taxes and stuff, but definitely school board is responsible. When it comes to people's money, the amount of money they pay in their mortgage payment, how it affects their life, and then a child, it's a lot more personal. And it's when I saw how much she'd be on the phone, and then the other thing too is I've always been fortunate enough to have people that I've had relationships with, like friendships with, like you and other people, where I'm like, if they're talking to me for this long, how many other people are they talking to in their day for this long, and having conversations all the time? And it's a huge sacrifice to do that, and to be an elected official, even on a city level. So we don't.
But all right, I'll tell you, it's there are a lot of times where, okay, the headache, the hassle, the pain in the neck factor is like, what am I doing this for?
Right. And
then every May, I'm up on stage at Verizon, and I'm seeing kids come across the stage, and seeing the sheer joy on their face of, oh my God, I actually made it. I graduated. Because sometimes, some of them, they're going to graduate. Those, that top 10%, they don't have any issues. But sometimes those kids from crosswinds, they're the ones that, oh man, I managed to gut through it, with a little help and a lot of tutoring. I managed to get my high school diploma, and just, the look of joy, the look of exhilaration that they're a high school graduate. It's, it makes
all the other stuff easier.
It makes those phone calls easier to take when you kind of have that balance of people. I love this school. I love I love this teacher. I love this program.
I'm glad you brought that up, because there has to be a reason, and it has to be the kids. So you've maintained. You've always gone to the school board meetings, and so you've been involved since before you're on school board, and you still go to all the school board meetings. So as a citizen, you've just always been very responsible in that way. So how would you encourage other citizens in Grand Prairie that do have opinions to get more involved?
Number one, it just comes down to show up.
Yeah.
That, and especially now with, you've got a computer in your hand. Hey, go to the meeting. You can be on your phone. You can be on Facebook. You can be on Twitter. You can be on Instagram or Snapchat, whatever your social tool is. But you can also be paying attention to what's going on. And there's a lot of stuff that, people have asked me about running for city council. And, my response has always been, yeah, what they do doesn't push my buttons.
Right.
At one point, before I got into radio, one of the things that, it was like, well, I love history. Maybe I want to be a history teacher. I ended up getting into radio, and that went out the window.
Right.
But my grandfather was a teacher and a principal, small town, southern, mid Illinois. He was a principal. Education was drilled into my head.
Right.
Of this is how you succeed, this is how you get ahead. So, I was always interested in, school board, but, until I got here, didn't really have the chance to participate. I started going just because it was kind of like, oh, there's a meeting that they're spending a lot of my money. Let me go, check up on it. And I think that, if you just go to a meeting, there's going to be something that you're worried about, concerned about, wondering. Go ask questions, make your voice heard.
How many people do you think on average come to meetings, just as the general public?
I've made jokes that there are meetings where I'm the only, there's me and a couple of other civilians, as I call them, in the audience.
There's the people that are getting recognized for stuff.
But once they clear out,
right,
they're, it's for the most part, there's Rodney Anderson's wife, Heather, is good friends with Emily Lyles, who took my spot on the board. And Heather pretty much comes to every meeting. Emily's husband, Scott, pretty much goes to every meeting. Sometimes it's the three of us.
Wow.
And I look around, and every other seat, come 9:30 in the meeting, is staff that's there because they need, they've been told to be there, they need to be there, they're assigned to be there, whatever it is. But, there's very few people, as I said, quote unquote civilians who show up for the meetings. But there's plenty of people who aren't happy with the school board, thinks the taxes are too high, don't like this, don't like that. And they're plenty vocal about it on Facebook.
Right.
But then they don't show up for meetings.
Yes.
And that's where it's like, show up for meetings. There's an open forum at the beginning and at the end that, hey, if you don't like something, come out and say it, and let them know, because they're not going to know. They may not see it on Facebook. They'll hear it if you're there in front of them. But then people are, they're hesitant to do it. They don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to upset people.
Right. That's been my biggest frustration when I'm on Facebook is just, I'm like, why don't you go and actually do something? Like, if you have these opinions, go tell somebody that's going to find out about it. And it's from anywhere from, the trash people didn't pick up my trash today. Well, why are you on Facebook talking about it? Like, go tell the person that needs to know. And, but
The flip side of that for me is I agree. But then I also, hey, if that's how they want to vent,
true,
let them vent. It's not going to do a lot. But if they want to vent on Facebook, let them vent on Facebook. Now, if it's somebody that's really got an issue, there have been people that I've sent a message to of, hey, if you really have an issue with transportation and the kid not picking, your kid not getting picked up by the bus the way he's supposed to, you need to contact the transportation person. Here's an email.
Right.
Go through these people. They can fix this. And I've done that offline, rather than out front.
Right.
But it's like, hey, you need to go to this person or you need to go to that person. Just griping about it, okay, you can dog cuss Ron Jensen on Facebook, but until you copy him or email him, he's not going to know what your issue is.
Right. But you do on Facebook. You don't live tweet, but you live Facebook the meetings. Like you are always going, okay, now they're doing this. Now they're doing this. So like, would there be any value? They have a live feed, right? That you can watch it online. But there's really nobody that reports on anything that happens there. Is that something that's standard for people not to report anything at the school board? Like as far as like a newspaper or something like that?
Well, we got into this talking about how media landscape has changed. The city of Grand Prairie can't afford a daily paper. When we started here, there was an Arlington Star Telegram, and it was just the Fort Worth Star Telegram had an Arlington edition. They had not a lot of reporters, but they had people who covered Arlington stuff. Well, okay, Grand Prairie isn't big enough to have dedicated staff from the morning news. Garland, Irving, Carrollton, Duncanville, wherever, there might be somebody who focuses on the south side of Dallas,
right,
and does stories from Grand Prairie, Cedar Hill, Duncanville, DeSoto, Lancaster, Balch Springs, wherever. But they're not going to. Each one of those isn't going to have its own reporter. So it's how things have changed. Where, part of it is that now they only really, you don't see the good news stories as much as you see the bad news stories.
Right.
Of if something happens in GPISD or there's a police shooting in Grand Prairie, that's going to make the news. You're not going to necessarily hear the good stories because there's not that reporter that's there to know about that. Yeah. But they hear about the scandal.
Right. Yeah, and as a real estate agent, we always have the GPISD always sponsors the Realtor Breakfast, and it helps me so much because of the different places that we've had it, where I can see, because I don't have a child that's in these schools yet, or wouldn't have normally gone to this particular school because it's not in her district or whatever. I get to see the inside of what the buildings are looking like now, because where the money is going. Like for example, we did one at Grand Prairie High School. Going into that nursing program, that they have this amazing, it's almost like a hospital set up inside there, and it's these dummies that, just call them dummies, it's like an understatement. These things are like a CPR dummy on steroids. They're all robotic. They're all set up with sensors. You can have them go through all these different scenarios so that these kids are practicing, getting this practice. There's one that I even think gives birth, and I would never have gotten to see that otherwise. Or when I go into, the David Daniels Academy, where they have the Hall of Fame in there of all the stuff that had gone on with Dalworth and the history of that, I would never have gotten to see that cool thing. So there is a sense of, because I'm in the business that I'm in, I do get to see a lot of where that money goes. So I can say, listen, I know that they spend a lot of money, but you should see some of the stuff. Or when we go to our reunion for South and we walked around and saw the vet tech area. Oh my gosh, that school is amazing, So there's a lot of really cool stuff that's happening, and I wish more people got to see it. There should be somebody that just goes around and does an interview inside of all these things. Maybe that's me. Maybe I need to start doing podcasts there.
And my argument has, and I said this to Dr. Hall back in the day when I was on the board of, yes, the district live streams the meetings. And they'll do a Facebook post maybe after the meeting of, hey, this was approved, whatever the highlight was.
Right.
But they won't do a live cast like I try to do of, on my Facebook feed. It's like, okay, now they're on to voting for this, and
right.
Okay, teacher contracts for next year were approved 7-0. You can expect a 2% raise, and now they're on to this health advisory council appointment, blah blah blah. And so I'll try to keep up, because people aren't necessarily going to go back and watch a 3 or 4 hour web stream. But they might, look at a Facebook feed and kind of scroll down of, okay, our contracts got approved. I know that, okay,
Yes.
now I know that we're going to get a 2% raise, and they know that they can find it on my Facebook feed rather than trying to, they don't do the minutes right away. They don't,
I've tried to watch one of those.
The
it's
web,
not easy.
If you know exactly what you're looking for, it's not as hard to find. Most people, they don't know what they're looking for. They know they heard about some vote that happened last night. They don't know where it is on the agenda and which segment they need to go to. So it makes it that much tougher. Where stuff like live tweeting I think would be more interaction with the consumers.
Right.
That they just it's not standard practice for them, so they just don't do it and don't want to do it, and
I wonder if any other district does that. But that would be a good substitute for not having like a reporter there, because it would. You're absolutely right. It hits all the parts of what a person would want to know that would not be able to go to the meeting, and to know what is the important parts of, because there's so many things y'all talk about. There's so many things, and I say y'all, you're not on the board anymore, but there's so many things that the board discusses, and then you go back and you do this. There's a lot, and there's some of the stuff that means nothing to you, and there's a lot of introducing the thing, and then we have to.
Well, and just to explain that, the way it's set up is everything is supposed to be an info item in 1 month, and then an action item the following month. And theoretically, if there's an info item and the board is not interested, is pushing back against it, it wouldn't come back as an action item. They would just, they don't want to do this, let's just let this die on the vine kind of thing.
Gotcha.
But the info action item is supposed to be that, we're going to introduce something in the February meeting. Here's the info about it. Here's why we want you to buy this curriculum, pay for this service, whatever it is. Here's the info about it. You're going to be asked to vote on it next month. Well, then, as a board member, we've got a month to go out and get hit up in the Tom Thumb, get hit up at Starbucks. Hey, well, I hear that you're going to spend a lot of money on this, or I hear why are we getting a new curriculum for that? Well, hey, this is why, blah, blah, blah. What are your thoughts? Hey, Jen, okay, well, tell me why you don't think, why you think we should spend that money, or why we shouldn't spend that money. And so, as a board member, you've got a month to go back to your community groups, your people that, I've referred to some of them as frequent flyers. The people that, when I see their phone number come up on my phone, this is, they're not calling to borrow my chainsaw. They're calling,
I think I'd be one of them, probably.
They're calling to ask about whatever the hot topic of the day is. And, and some of my best friends are those frequent flyers.
Yeah.
But, it's the people that are going to call and, bend your ear about something. And, so it's like, hey, Jenna, what's up? What, oh, yeah, you want some information on that? Sure, I'd, love to. Here's why we're doing it that way. Here's why here's what we're doing or what we're not doing. And, I think that, with that month lag time, it gives us a chance to reach out to the community.
Right.
It gives the community a chance to reach out to us. Now, it does drive some people crazy, and that if you just see the March meeting, they introduce something, there's no discussion, there's very little presentation. It's just, okay, we're asking you to vote to approve $1 million for this. And it's like, okay, any discussion? No, 7-0. Well, because the 30 minutes of discussion was done the month before when it was an information item.
Right.
And it does drive some people crazy. And I get that. But I also, that's where you've really got to see the February meeting and the March meeting.
Right.
Was there 45 minutes of discussion last month? If there is, and nobody's phone has blown up about this, and nobody's got any questions, and there's not any, apparent issues with it, there's a reason that it's getting an easy 7-0 vote.
Do y'all follow Robert's Rules of Order?
Yeah, vaguely. I mean, it's kind of, the board is supposed to. There is some stuff that it's they play a little loosey-goosey in that, I think the chair is supposed to recognize if someone has a question. And it's just, if so-and-so is up there doing a presentation and, hey, I've got a question. Can you tell me what and it's not, the chair recognizes Mr. Pryor or Mr. McCrary or whoever.
Right.
It's just, Steve's got a question.
But is that where like the introducing it and the discussion and all that comes into play?
Not really, because
no. Because I know, like, the reason I'm asking is because we're starting the SGP Alumni Association, and so one of the things when you start a nonprofit is we have to follow we're going to follow Robert's Rules of Order, and you have to present the bylaws. Then you have to give them a chance to talk about the bylaws. Then you actually, vote on the bylaws. So there's actually some kind of time, So I was just curious if it was that's what y'all followed or they followed.
Because Robert's Rules of Order is more the actual conduct of the meeting itself. Like I said, the info action item thing is more board policy. In that, like I said, and this is where I've gotten upset and created a stink a couple of times where they've tried to put something through as an action item without doing it as an info item first, and it's like, no, this is disrespecting our community if we're not giving them a chance to weigh in before we just vote on it. Because once we vote on it, it's a done deal.
Right. So we only have a couple minutes left, but I was just, because we have an election coming up, and so what would you tell people to encourage them to get out and vote? That's always something that I'm always trying to. The local elections are so important, and so what would you tell people? So few people vote.
I think the thing is that if you can gripe whether you vote or not, I think that I'm going to take your gripe a little bit more seriously if I see that you've got a voting record where you've gotten out and voted one way or the other for somebody on city council, somebody on school board, county commissioner, whatever it might be. The ones that kind of drive me crazy is, I hear them complain and then I look and it's like, you don't like this, you don't like the school board, but you haven't voted.
Right.
And it's kind of like, so you're not really doing anything to affect change by voting against incumbents. You're just not voting. And it's like that. How do you think the change happens if you don't do something to make it happen?
Right.
And so, tell people, pretty much every candidate has some kind of Facebook presence. And because Facebook is still, the dominant social media that, because it's funny you mentioned Kathy on Facebook. Kathy's on Facebook a lot more. I'm on Twitter a lot more. And so, but that's just me trying to keep up on news and, and, I'll go to Facebook like when I do this and I check it every day, but I don't check it 5 times a day.
Right. Or scroll and scroll and scroll. And
but every candidate has some kind of Facebook presence. Just figure out who's running in your area. You can find it on the district website or the city website of who the candidates are. Google their name, search them on Facebook. You'll find that they've got some kind of, Facebook presence. And then what do you like? What do you not like? Do you, we had a couple of years ago, one of the city council challengers was running against one of the incumbents. And I told him, your problem is your campaign is the incumbent's campaign. You're just a different person. And it's like, okay, if you're for supporting our police department, more code enforcement, and economic development along 161, so is Swafford, Jensen, Humphrey, so are all of these guys. They're, your campaign is the same as their campaign. Why should I vote for you? It's, unless I don't like Mayor Jensen. If you're going to run against him, tell me tell me how you're different. And, you want to, people, hopefully they see some difference in these candidates and, okay, this is, this is the one I want. This is who more aligns with my thoughts, my feelings, my, goals for the city or the district.
Yeah. And it's easy to find out, because everybody, I think that y'all, when you run for something, aren't you supposed to have a Facebook page dedicated just to running? You're not
No, you don't have to.
You don't have to?
No.
Oh, okay. Well,
no, I think everybody does it because, there's 330 million people in the U.S. and there's like 400 million Facebook accounts.
Right.
Everybody's got, almost everybody's got one.
Right.
Especially adults. Okay, our kids, not so much. Again, they've got a Snapchat or Instagram or whatever. But, most adults have some form of Facebook. Probably a startlingly high percentage. I'm not going to say all, but, most adults, especially in that voting range of people that are active in the community, are probably have some Facebook page, even if they don't use it much, that they can find out something if they're looking for it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, Steve, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Anytime, glad to do it.
Yes, thank you so much.